Support for this episode comes from Gvoke HypoPen. Now that Benny is on his own more and more, I'm grateful that he's open about his diabetes journey and always tells his friends how to use his emergency glucagon, Gvoke HypoPen. Gvoke HypoPen is a ready-to-use rescue pen for treating very low blood sugar in people with diabetes ages 2 and above. If you take insulin or sulfonylureas, you are at risk for your blood sugar going too low. Low blood sugar emergencies can happen unexpectedly, and they demand quick action. You need a safety net when it matters most. Be ready to treat a very low blood sugar with Gvoke HypoPen. Find out more, go to gvokeglucagon.com/Stacy. That's gvokeglucagon.com/STACEY. Gvoke should not be used if you have a tumor in the gland on top of your kidneys called pheochromocytoma, or if you have a tumor in your pancreas called insulinoma. Visit gvokeglucagon.com/risk for safety information.
This is Diabetes Connections with Stacy Sims.
This week, for the first time, you can buy a continuous glucose monitor over the counter. No prescription needed. This summer, we went from no CGMs available this way to now having 2. This week, we're talking about the Dexcom Stelo with the company's Chief Operating Officer, Jake Leach. We'll also get an update on G7 features, including Dexcom's plans to address concerns over geofencing and their sensor replacement policy. This podcast is not intended as medical advice. If you have those kinds of questions, please contact your healthcare provider. Welcome, everyone, to another week of the show. Always so glad to have you here. I am your host, Stacy Sims. We aim to educate and inspire about diabetes with a focus on people who use insulin. And before we jump in, I just have to say I'm feeling a kinship with those of you, probably most of you, who go through intense eye exams. I have to do this every couple of years. I had an issue years ago, but I am struggling a little bit here because I went away with my sister on a fabulous vacation. My glasses were falling off my head. I reached up and smacked myself in the eye, scratching my eyelid, and had a quick vision issue. Luckily, no pain and nothing terrible, but I was out of the country. But when I got home, I was able to see my eye doctor right away. Everything is fine. But I don't know about you, once I get my eyes dilated, the rest of the day is a wash. It's difficult to read. I'm more tired than usual. So I don't mean to complain. I'm kind of laughing at myself that I'm sharing all this, but we're honest around here. And that's what's going on behind the scenes as I am recording this. Okay, to the subject at hand. We have been covering advances and changes in CGM since the very beginning of this podcast back in 2015. I feel like this is a seismic change, not in hardware or software, but in access. For the first time in the United States, you can just get online and order yourself a CGM. I did it this morning. I have thought about trying a CGM before, but there are a lot of reasons why I haven't. It seemed weird to use a device designed for people with diabetes when I don't have it. I never really wanted to waste one of Benny's. You never know when you're going to need a backup. But with Stelo now, I'm finding myself curious. We've done a lot of episodes and news updates on Stelo. I've covered this on the Type 2 show I launched last year as well. This interview with Dexcom Chief Operating Officer Jake Leach does mostly focus on features for people with Type 2 and pre-diabetes. But I also got the chance to ask him about G7 issues, including geofencing and possible ketone monitoring. And we get an update on that 3-sensor replacement rule from earlier in the year. And of course, Dexcom going into space, which was announced on the morning we did this interview. Jake joined me from Europe. He was attending the EASD conference. That's the European Association for the Study of Diabetes. As always, bear in mind that Dexcom is a sponsor of the show, but only of the commercial. They don't tell me what to ask or have control over the content. And you'll hear from Jake Leach right after this. For many of you, as you listen, this is going to sound like a weird question. Why do you use the insulin pump you've got on right now? There's a really good chance that you went on that pump 15 or 20 years ago because it's what your doctor had back then, and you've never really thought about changing. That was us until Benny's Pump Company went out of business. And I was amazed how much things had changed when we looked for a new one. I'm telling you, it is time to take advantage of what's new. If you need a sign to switch, this is it. Omnipod 5, the tubeless automated insulin delivery system, is here, and it's available through the pharmacy, which means that you can try it today, even if your tubed pump is under warranty. Fill out the quick online form, see if you're eligible for a free trial. Go to diabetes-connections.com, click on the Omnipod logo. For full safety risk information and free trial terms and conditions, visit omnipod.com/diabetesconnections. Jake, welcome back. Hope your travels were good. We're catching up while you're in Spain.
Absolutely. Great to be here. We're here on the ground in Madrid at the EASD conference. Maybe it's a conference. We'll see.
Well, it's funny that you started with on the ground, because my first question, I just saw this headline this morning, and the headline is Dexcom's CGM system warned in outer space.
Yes.
What happened here?
We're pushing the frontier, It's actually a really exciting program where there's some researchers that wanted to study CGM use in space. And so there was a whole bunch of work done to qualify the product to be able to actually go up in the space capsule. And so that was completed. And so now it's actually on its way to space, in space now.
We could do a whole episode on it, I'm sure, and maybe we will when they bring it back. What changes were made? Was it just to get it ready to withstand pressures and things like that? Or is it actually a different measurement?
No, it's the exact same product. It's actually the G6 product. It's the exact same product that we sell today. It was just there's a lot of work anytime you do anything in spacecraft or even on aircraft. There's a lot of testing that has to happen to ensure compatibility and that there's no issues. And so now that the device has cleared that, now it's going up in space, and they'll study the physiology, like the glucose dynamics of an astronaut.
Very cool. All right, we will definitely follow up on that. But you are here today really to talk about the launch of Stelo. Take us through the basics. You and I have talked about it before, but for those who are not familiar, this is Dexcom's over-the-counter product made for people who do not dose insulin. But take us through some of the basic features and pricing.
Sure, of course. So we're incredibly excited about Stelo because it is the first over-the-counter product in the United States, CGM product in the United States, first approved and first launched. So it's now available. It's available at stelo.com. It is a brand new product. It's based on our many years of accuracy, reliability, performance, ease of use in CGM, and it's built on the G7 hardware, but it is a completely different user experience. As you mentioned, it's really tailored for people who either have diabetes or pre-diabetes but aren't taking insulin. That's an important difference because those who, as you know, are on insulin need some of the hypoglycemia protection features that we have as part of G7, the urgent low soon alerts, the urgent low alert, all of that kind of protective feature is designed for insulin users or people who have hypoglycemia risk. The population that Stelo is designed for are not at risk for hypoglycemia. What their challenges are often is hyperglycemia and helping better manage their glucose, particularly in the high range. And so the product is designed to help really uncover and help people learn about how their current habits impact their glucose, bring the insights into how they can potentially change their habits to improve their glucose, ultimately trying to lower average glucose, lower A1Cs. And then it's a great tool also for basically showing what those healthy habits do and then helping confirm them and so people continue with those habits. There's nothing like seeing your own data to really bring light to the differences in how food can impact you as an individual. It's very personalized. Sometimes we're told, don't do this, don't do that. But when you actually see the impact, it really unlocks things. And we know that the majority of people who are going to use Stelo have never seen their glucose readings before, certainly never seen them continuously. And so it's going to be a whole new world for them to see about their physiology.
I have some questions about that. But before we go on, you had mentioned that Stelo does not give, as it sounds, does not give low alerts or alarms.
It does not. It does not have low alerts built in. It does have a really cool feature called Spike Detect that is designed to detect hyperglycemic excursions that are specifically, it's an algorithm that tunes itself to the individual because everybody's glycemic profiles are going to look a little different. And so it's designed to pick out the most impactful glycemic excursion someone has in a day. And it fine tunes itself as you wear the sensor over time. The idea there is help people understand what caused that excursion, the more meaningful glucose excursion. What food choice was it, or meal composition? There's so many things you learn about wearing a CGM, even if you don't have diabetes, around just how food impacts your body.
Can you tell us a little bit more when you say fine tune? What does that mean? Is
So
there a learning capability built in here?
it does. So the idea is if you've got someone whose glucose, they have type 2 diabetes, they're just starting to use CGM and their glucose is quite high and they have a lot of large glucose excursions throughout the day as they're learning. We don't want to be highlighting every single glucose excursion for them. We want this to be a simple, approachable system. So the idea is let's highlight the most meaningful ones. The system kind of looks for, okay, what are the most impactful ones? And it starts to learn your glucose profile over time. Someone who has less glucose excursions, but is still very interested in learning about what causes the largest impact to their glucose readings, that one it'll fine tune and basically highlight their main excursions throughout the day. So the idea is let's make it a very useful feature no matter what your glucose dynamics look like. Because the product is, it's over the counter. It's also the broadest indication for CGM ever. It's for all adults that don't take insulin. The actual indication for use goes well beyond diabetes, prediabetes. The design of the product was focused for folks who have type 2 and prediabetes. But we know that there's going to be a lot of users outside of that group. And we're really excited actually to continue evolving the platform and the software and understanding the user needs of the broader group, because we do feel that there's a real opportunity there for very broad use of CGM now that it's over the counter. The goal here was to get access for people to this technology that could benefit.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I'm probably going to start wearing it just to see what goes on. I've never worn a CGM. Yeah, well, if I worked for Dexcom, I'd probably have a CGM for the last 10 years. But I've never worn one for many reasons I've shared before. But I think I'll probably do it just to kind of check out the system and see what it's like, and also to see what's happening with my glucose. But I'm curious, you've mentioned this very broad audience and how you want to kind of see how people use it, what they get out of it. Can you change? I assume since it's built on the G7 platform, you can change and adjust the software to read out whatever you all think is most valuable to these folks. Could you see changing some of the readout features if people say in this population, you know what, I'm having a lot of lows that I didn't realize, or I want something else? Can you change the software of it pretty easily?
As developers of the software, our intent is to continue to innovate on it and bring new features that are helpful for users. And even as of right now, the software is designed, it tailors itself. It asks you some questions when you're setting it up. Do you have diabetes? Do you have pre-diabetes? And so it sets the target range, the initial kind of default target range based on the way you answer those questions. And then you can always go in and adjust it if you want. So that was kind of our simple first approach to helping people set a target and then manage within that goal. But, over time, there's going to be a lot more here coming that continues to expand the benefit of the product.
Yeah, you could see lots of things. I mean, we don't have to go through the litany, but in additional to lows, even, although it's really funny, Jake, to try to divorce my brain from thinking this is tied to some kind of automated insulin system, right? It's not machine taking action. This is all for the user to have information from. But you could see someone who's going to take a medication saying like, today I started this medication. Let's see what happens to my glucose. Or please watch out for this thing. I want to see a spike or even or whatever it is because I've changed this behavior.
Yeah.
So you could definitely see changes coming.
Today, you can log those types of things into it. The Stelo app will automatically pull in, if you're using a device that tracks your sleep. So like an Oura Ring, Samsung Ring, or even some of the mattresses that track sleep. The Stelo app will actually pull that in and it'll record it and it keeps it inside the database. Also activity. So the number of steps actually gets pulled into that app too. As a user, if you wanted to, right, you can set it up. So then you can also kind of see how some of those things can impact glucose over time. And that's part of our goal, is to continue to enhance the insight algorithm to use some of that other data to help further improve the insights that we can give someone to help them try and achieve their goal.
Not that people with type 1 diabetes need more information. Some people feel overloaded already, but I'm sure some of my listeners heard that and say, can I loop my sleep and my walking into my G7? Any plans for that?
Yeah, activity is actually in G7 today. So you can loop your activity data right into G7. Sleep is definitely on the roadmap. I don't think we have it quite implemented on G7 yet, but it's coming soon. Yeah. But anything of the data that goes into either Health Connect on the Android platform or Apple Health on the Apple platform, that's the database that we use to draw the data in. There's all kinds of apps that can put data in there. There's even some that do nutrition. So we're also looking at that as an option to be able to pull data in through utilizing some of that feature set.
This might be a dumb question, but that never stopped me. Is that Apple Health integration, was that part of the Apple Watch changeover, or has that always been there, or was it there before?
Yeah, it's a great question. So those two aren't linked. So we've had Apple Health integration for quite a while where our Dexcom CGM puts the CGM data into Apple Health to be shared with other apps that want to consume that data that the user authorizes. What's new for G7 was the ability to input the activity data. So that's fairly new. That came out earlier this year. And then the Apple Watch direct to Apple Watch integration, another super exciting feature that launched earlier this year, was another highly requested user feature that we were really excited to get out there just recently.
Great. Obviously, Abbott is out with their over-the-counter sensor as well. Let me just give you the floor. Make the case. What is different and better, in your opinion, about the Dexcom Stelo? Right back to the interview. But first, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Edgepark. As you're managing life with diabetes, Edgepark is here to support you on your health journey. Discover convenience and peace of mind with Edgepark, your trusted supplier in diabetes management supplies. Edgepark has a wide variety of pump and CGM solutions from top brands to fit your unique needs. Plus, Edgepark works with most insurance companies and handles the paperwork to navigate insurance complexities for you and make the ordering process as seamless as possible. You work hard to manage your diabetes. Let Edgepark take care of the rest. Go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Edgepark logo.
I think it starts with the accuracy, reliability, and performance of Dexcom. So the G7 platform is the most accurate sensor available. So I think it starts with that. And it's actually quite important. For accuracy and reliability is quite important in this user group. It's important for all users, but it's also important for users that have less glycemic variability, right? So if you've got somebody whose glucose doesn't change as much throughout the day as someone who's maybe insulin dependent, being able to suss out some of those insights, it's important to have highly accurate glucose data. So I think that's part of it. The other part is the feature set and the way that we've developed this app was 100% based on user feedback and our knowledge around how to develop easy to use products. We're incredibly excited about that. Also, the other case I'd make is we intend to innovate very rapidly. Frankly, Lingo's been out there for a while. This product, Stelo, is brand new. We're seeing fantastic user feedback, and we're going to bring innovation very rapidly to it. I think our users of our G7 product have seen that since the launch, quite a bit of new capabilities coming out. We're going to do the same with Stelo and continue to enhance the feature set. If you're looking for innovation, Dexcom is the innovation leader in continuous glucose monitoring. We have so many firsts, including the first over-the-counter product approved and the first launch. I think that's what you're getting when you go with Dexcom.
One thing, and I'll speak out of both sides of my mouth here. One thing that's concerning about over-the-counter is the education, right? And we want more access. We want more affordability. I am thrilled to see an over-the-counter version of anything CGM, and I hope it continues. But I already have one friend who has type 2, and he knows to stick his finger. He's done this before, which is different, as you said, than most people who are going to get this. So he had two questions for me. His first was, it doesn't match the finger stick. And the second was, oh my gosh, I ate an apple and look how high my blood sugar went, right? As opposed to a cookie, which it would be the same kind of spike depending on the fruit you're eating. So I guess my question on the first is, people aren't going to see those differences because they won't be sticking their finger. But how are you explaining kind of what they should be looking out for here? Is there any education that goes along with, getting that device?
Yeah, actually, I see the Stelo product as a significant education tool. It's basically providing insight into glucose dynamics that a user's never seen before. And, I think it's the same when we talk about like the differences between finger stick meters and CGM. Any one point in time, it's highly unlikely that they perfectly match, right? Because they're basically making measurements of, a finger drop on the tip of a finger. Who knows what leftover sugar from the apples on there. So there's some variability there. And I think the important thing is really looking at the CGM trace over time. And inside the Stelo app, there's actually a Learn tab that has quite a bit of content to help people understand what is glucose, how does it change throughout the day, what does it mean, what does good look like. There's a whole bunch of learning in there. And it's curated based on what people are gravitating towards. So we'll continue to update it as we learn more about what people are looking for in the Learn tab. But you're really unveiling information that people have never seen before. So it is important. But the educational aspect of it is super important. And ultimately, we're trying to show people how their habits are impacting them, helping them move towards healthier habits, and then reinforcing those healthy habits.
That's great. Okay. I have a couple of type 1 centered questions for you.
I figured you would.
So I do want to ask a couple of questions for the type 1 audience. We did an episode recently, and you and I talked about this very briefly last year about geofencing. I'm not going to re-explain it. You and I both know what the issue is. My listeners know as well about geofencing. Can you take us through what Dexcom is planning to do here? Because the community that I serve seems to have two questions. One, is this it for the foreseeable future? Can they expect geofencing so when they travel abroad, they may lose some features if they have to reboot their phone? And are you planning to publicize this in a way that they feel would be a little bit more open and let people prepare more?
Yeah, it's a really important question. Making sure users have the access to the data they need, even while traveling, is super important to us, and making sure we meet their needs. I'd say two things. One, we're very open about what it means to travel with G7. If you go to our website, you say traveling with G7, it talks all about, gives guidelines. It says, hey, if you run into a situation where you have to uninstall and reinstall your app while traveling, that can cause some issues. And our number one recommended backup there is just have a receiver. Bring a G7 receiver with you, even if you don't use it all the time. They're readily available. I think with a coupon, they're about $200. You can get a G7 receiver. That's a great way to have a backup. But that being said, we've made a lot of enhancements to this system. It was a brand new system with the G7 app. The reason it was implemented, I think you've covered before, is around ensuring that users have the features that have been approved within the place where they access their product, right? But one of the things that is important to note is that we've made a lot of enhancements to this part of the system, and we're going to continue to make those. We have a feature coming out within the next couple of months that actually is going to alleviate a lot of the issue here. And the idea is that you have to create your account in your country of residence, but if you're traveling and have to do that reinstall, it will work with your account because we cached your location when you first set up your account. It's a feature called Trusted User. And so that is going to be coming out in the next couple of months. I've always talked about that feature being in the second half of this year. And so we've been working hard to make sure it gets done. And so it is an enhancement that's coming that I think will alleviate the vast majority of the question here.
Yeah, and I think that's great. I mean, obviously, even $200 can be a barrier for a lot of people. Yeah. I think back to when Benny was little and we would lose devices and things like that. But more importantly, I think people are looking at AID systems and are worried about, will it work, will it won't, and may it not. And then, I think personally, and, I hate to take it down to the N of one, but Benny may do a semester abroad. And then if he has issues, right, what's going to happen? So the trusted user, I assume, would fix that. Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll keep an eye out for that. And is that something that people will get a notification about? Will it be automated? I know you haven't rolled it out yet, but will we know easily?
It'll be automated. So it'll come out with that software, and then we'll update our FAQs on the website and the user knowledge base to have the new information, which will be the important thing. But you have to create your account in the country of residence. And then after that, you don't have to, you won't have the same issues.
All right. Not to belabor the point, but if I have already established my account, will I have to check a box, do a thing, redo it after this?
No, you don't have to redo it. No, it's basically based on your previous one. Yeah. That's super important because you want your account and all of that previous data.
Yeah. Let me tell you, having my kid change over, become a legal adult, and making sure that everything is properly in its place as he replaces me on all these accounts has been quite the adventure. I hate to always ask what's next and what's new because I feel like, I don't want to move ahead too far from these recent and important changes. We were asking about direct to watch for so long now. It's here. All right, next, what's up? But I did, right? But I did talk to Abbott recently about ketone monitoring. And we've talked about this before, but this seems to be so important as we move forward and hear more about medications where people may want to use in conjunction with their diabetes medications, but have to look out for ketones in a way that perhaps we have thought of it in the type 1 community for sickness, emergency, things like that in a very different way. Can you kind of update us on ketone monitoring?
Sure. I think you hit it on the head there where in terms of, within type 1 diabetes or type 2, where you're looking at high glucose causing DKA, a glucose sensor is the best way to prevent that or detect that, right? Because you basically can alert someone that their glucose is going high, you're out of range. We've seen that in our clinical studies where within SMBG treated groups, so people doing finger sticks, there are incidences of DKA. In the CGM group, this large study that we did, we didn't see any DKA because there were sensors and they're managed glucose. But you bring up an important point around potentials for euglycemic DKA and ketones and having to monitor that. Ketones is an area that I think that has its place, like subcutaneous ketone sensing, and something that we are investigating and working on. We've been working on it for quite a while. We've been keeping our product development there a little bit closer to the vest than our competitor. But rest assured that it is, we believe, part of the story here.
Great. And then I also want to ask you about the Dexcom G7 replacement. When I spoke at, I think it was at ADA. Yeah, when I talked to Kevin Sayre at ADA, we talked about this concern in the community that 3 replacements a year, for no reason, and that's it. And then there were a lot of concerns about if it doesn't stick, why is that my fault, et cetera. And he said, you all were working on it, would probably revisit that. Can you speak to the replacement policy?
Sure. I think, it's super important to ensure our customers have the sensors they need. So I think that's priority number 1 for us. Number 2 is any sensor that fails gets replaced. And so I think the question here is we're talking about what constitutes a failure, right? And so one of the things that we looked at was we looked at all of our data over time of users. And we found that if we take away the actual sensor failures that can happen, right? We've all experienced them. If you take those actual sensor failures away and you look at things like sensors falling off, people knocking them off, taking them off early, we found that the vast majority of folks get 3 or less of the need 3 or less of those a year. What we put in place was a guideline around, if you don't need 3 or more, we're not going to basically replace a bunch of sensors that we don't need to replace. But it's important to us, cases like with pediatrics, where if there is a situation where they need more than 3 replacements, we have an escalation process where we can deal with those cases on a case-by-case basis. Our technical support is well-trained in how to do that. The balance here is trying to notify our users that, hey, don't expect that if you're not spending a lot of time making sure your sensors stay on, that we're just going to keep replacing everything all the time, right? That's not a fair situation to be in. But there's the balance of some people do have challenges and we want to be able to address those. And so we've adapted how we're communicating the policy too with our teams and just training better and making it understood. But we want to make sure that people have the sensors they need. There is a process for those.
Yeah.
The other thing too is working with those users who are having challenges, because there are lots of things you can do to help ensure sensors stay adhered and continue to function. And so just kind of highlighting the importance of that is part of this program.
I don't know if you have this off the top of your head or can share it, but I'd be curious that 3 or fewer replacements, that 3 or fewer, not failures, but slide off, get knocked off, what that number is for the pediatric population. Because I would imagine on average, it's probably just a little higher because kids are bananas.
It's a little higher for peds, which is why we consider peds a specific case. And so that's an area where the team's been well trained in. Okay, we're talking about a pediatric customer here. There's a higher likelihood that they're going to need more of these. And so that's why we've made that update.
Is there a similar policy for Stelo?
Stelo is a little bit different in that users actually are interacting with our digital website bot where they can basically type in, hey, I need a sensor replacement. And it's because it's not for pediatrics, right? This is an adult only product. It's a little bit different. And so that one, it actually on a case by case basis, we're evaluating, which sensors failed, which ones didn't, and then how we replace them. It is important there is a serial number required to be able to replace Stelos. So for Stelo users, it's important to keep track of your sensor serial numbers.
Excellent. We're almost to the end of this. Got to let you go in a minute. But you're at this big conference where lots of news is made. Any studies, anything you're revealing? I should have asked you this first. We went to space first. But is there anything that, before I let you go, that you would want to share from the conference?
There is quite a bit of new data being presented here. But the way that I'd summarize it is a lot of it is around the benefits of CGM in the type 2 population, both insulin users and non-insulin users. One of the things that we're dedicated to is continuing to build the evidence around the benefit of CGM. There's still, countries around the globe where we're seeking access for insulin users that they don't yet have reimbursement for CGM. And then as we look beyond the insulin users, there's also significant benefit to CGM. And the CGM combined with any of the glucose lowering therapies, GLP-1s, SGLT2s, and insulin, of course, you combine those, you get better outcomes. We know that inherently, but we're just producing more and more data that shows it.
Great. Well, Jake, thank you so much for joining me. I'm excited to try Stelo probably myself and to see, what the impact is on the type 2 community and pre-diabetic community. So thanks for joining me. I'm sure we'll talk again soon, and safe travels home.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
You're listening to Diabetes Connections with Stacy Sims.
More information in the show notes as always, and I'll keep you posted when I get the Stelo. I'll post on social media more about that. I'm interested to see. I know what's going to happen, right? We all know what's going to happen, but I do think it's going to be an interesting personal experience. I'm super late to the game here. I know lots and lots of parents did this many years ago. I never felt right about it, and I just never wanted to use any of Benny's backups because you never know when you're going to need one. A quick story about that. We're very fortunate. Everybody's skin is so different, and Benny has great luck in keeping his devices on, except when he was wrestling, but that's just gross and sweaty. And he's very careful. He always is, cleans, skin tack, puts the Dexcom or infusion set on, and then with the Dexcom, he uses the overpatch that comes with it for the G7, and he's been super lucky. It sticks really great. The night before he left for college, and you know what I'm going to say here, but the night before he left, he inserted a new G7 and it didn't fire correctly. I'm not sure how to describe that, but if it's happened to you, you know what I'm talking about. You go to insert it and it misfires, or the wire doesn't make it in. I mean, the wire, I don't think ever came out of the inserter, and that was that. So he went to another one. That one, he said, inserted correctly, but basically fell off 5 minutes later, and he kind of felt where the adhesive is, and he said he'd never experienced this before. It just wasn't sticky at all. So who knows what happened? He left them home with me, with the little boxes and all the numbers that are on them, to call in for him. A parting gift, maybe, so I could help him out one more time before he went back to his sophomore year of college. And they replaced them, no issues, sent the replacements right to Benny at college. But you never know what's going to happen. We have extra G6 sensors. I'm going to pick up a transmitter when my insurance will cover it and send that to him at college just so he has backups. Because I don't know about you, but back in the day, we were doing 10 finger sticks a day on this kid. Ask him when he last did a finger stick. I don't know. We've just gotten to a place where we're so used to this technology and it's so important for how well his AID system works. Of course, you should know how to check your blood sugar, but I don't want him to be without a Dexcom because I like the way it works with his entire system, and he feels more comfortable that way too. That is a long way of saying I'm glad they're working on the sensor replacement issue, but I do understand there has to be a balance. Okay, thank you to my editor, John Buchanan from Audio Editing Solutions. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Stacy Sims. I'll see you back here soon. Until then, be kind to yourself.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacy Sims Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.
When I think about our family's use of CGM and Dexcom, it's getting harder and harder to remember how we did things before. I mean, how did we manage when Benny needed something like 10 finger sticks a day when he was a toddler? We thought it was amazing to switch to Dexcom CGM when it needed to be calibrated twice a day. Remember that? Now, Dexcom G6 eliminates finger sticks for calibration and diabetes treatment decisions. We love the alerts and alarms, and that we can change them both for him and for us. A lot has changed as Benny has grown from a toddler with type 1 to a college student. Dexcom Share and Follow has let us help give him more and more independence. If your glucose alerts and readings from the G6 do not match symptoms or expectations, use a blood glucose meter to make diabetes treatment decisions. Learn more, go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Dexcom logo.